whether Diwali has come early this year, or is this just one pataka which will be gone when a new week starts, or will we have a bumper festive season?
No, I think this is a great announcement we heard yesterday. I think it's going to totally change the economic progress in our country. I would say that the only announcement I've seen which is of greater importance to the economy was in '91 when we changed things. But this will have tremendous positive effect to my mind. The economy will pick up, businesses will pick up, and I think we'll see a turnaround.
How soon do you see this happening? We were speaking to some very formidable economists yesterday, and they said that it'll take 2 to 3 years for the investment cycle to kickstart and for these announcements to start turning into new investments.
No, it's not only a question of investments to kickstart. It's also a question that if companies are going to save an X amount, they will use some of it to promote sales. And I think that will start the cycle going much faster. And then if demand picks up, as I expect it will, then investments will also start very soon. Remember, just announcing investments can have a lot of positive effect. And the start of getting investments going can have a lot of positive effect. So I am very optimistic.
Mr. Mohan Das Pai, you've seen as a big supporter of the Modi government, but you've also been poking and punching them recently. What do you make of the announcements that have been made by the finance minister and the impact this will have on the economy?
Rahul, we have to see the context in which the announcement is made. I think the last 5 years have been amongst the most traumatic for Indian industry because of several shocks due to reforms that have happened. We had demonetization, which shocked India. It's a good thing for India. I believe in it. Then we had GST, which again caused turmoil. Then we had the IBC, which took many cronies to whatever it is. And then we had the RERA, which brought in reforms. Then we had the NPA crisis, where the banks were not lending and we had problems. And then we got this NBFC liquidity crisis. So there's been crisis after crisis after crisis, and industry's ability to respond to the shock is gone. I was speaking to the machine tool manufacturers in Bangalore. They've given up. They said, we can't cope with this change anymore.
How many of these crises that you mentioned do you believe are of the making of the Modi Sarkar?
Well, I think all of them were policy announcement. I think majority were good, except they didn't take certain measures to help mitigate them. For example, you should have reduced the interest rates 2 years ago so that interest rate could be lower. You should have pumped in liquidity into the system. Now, what broke the system was the lack of liquidity. October last year was the time when liquidity was not there because of the NBFC crisis. NBFCs are financing 40% of consumer goods, that is cars and RERA. NBFCs are giving money to all the real estate companies. Now you choke off the money, liquidity is down, and everybody is saying there's no money in the market. I don't have money. It's not income, but liquidity and the ability to buy, and that is what is hurting industry, and they see no hope. On top of this, we had massive tax terrorism. And tax terrorism, people going to jail, nothing in the end. Every day you listen to somebody going to jail, somebody going to ED, somebody this, somebody that. Everybody is scared. And everybody. And there's been a gap in trust between the government and industry because government has not been talking to industry. The change is essential. We have to remake India. We have to get rid of the past. But you have to talk to industry. You have to make sure there's liquidity. You have to lower interest rates. You have to make sure that people are comfortable, people understand. Communication has been lacking. Now, the government has realized this.
For a prime minister who built his own story around the idea of the Gujarat model and being pro-business, why do you think for so long they were deaf to what industry needed?
Well, I think for the political system, they were interested in making sure that the bottom of the pyramid got all the things they want to make a good life. No prime minister in India's history has done as much for the poor in 5 years as Prime Minister Modi has done. And that's why he came back with a resounding victory. But he also realized now, by his speech, that you have to take care of people at the top, who are the wealth creators, who are the ones who give job, the entrepreneurs, and make them feel good. And that's why he made the statement on Independence Day that, look, wealth creators are good people, we should not demonize them. And this is coming out of that. So I think the next 5 years, we'll see more focus on industry, because the necessities of life for more Indians has been taken care of, and now we must improve the wealth. Also, the political system was there. After the Jut Boot Ki Sarkar, I think the government withdrew because it was becoming seen as anti-poor. So now, I think this is one step that's been taken. We'll see many more steps, and I think now good times will come in the next 1 or 2 years.
From where you are at, what are you making of the cuts in corporate taxation and the impact this will have on the economy?
I think I'm delighted with the changes which have taken place. It's unbelievable. Finally, I think what has happened is there is a recognition that there was a cancer. We were only providing crocin for a cancer patient. This is the first time I think we have provided chemotherapy which actually will turn the downslide moving upwards. And I think the supply side economics is totally been addressed by this strategic move, which is, I think, going to make a big change. I don't think that the loss of the exchequer will be as much as it is being suggested. It's going to be maybe 1/3 of that ultimately by the end of the one year of reduction of taxes. But I think it's a wonderful thing. However, I think we need to address the demand side also. I think if you've taken care of the supply side, which I believe this work has taken place, I think the demand side could be with a strategic reduction in, say, GST by 25% for the next 6 months. I think that would address the demand side of it also. And I think in 3 months' time, we would be able to get out of this recessionary. But what Mr. Mohan Das Pai said is most important, which is liquidity has to be addressed by the Reserve Bank in a much more structural way. Something like we did in 2008 in terms of restructuring has still not come from the Reserve Bank. I think I'm looking forward to that kind of liquidity being addressed immediately.
You know, you said something very important, that this is a cancer. Do you think of this as a man-made cancer?
Sorry?
You said that this is cancer and we are now finally addressing chemotherapy. Is this man-made cancer?
I'm not looking back at what is the cause of the cancer, because, you know, there could be hundreds of reasons for cancer, and I'm not interested to hear that, because you can always blame people for having a cancer, and we still don't have good reason for why cancer was there, and you can call lots of reasons for it. I'm not here for that. I'm here to get rid of the cancer, and we have solutions for that. We have seen it all over the world when recessions are there, how cancer can be removed in the recessions of the entire world. We can do it much better than anybody else because we have institutions like Niti Aayog, institutions like Reserve Bank, and we have lots of other methods by which we can get out of this cancerous position very quickly. Earlier, we didn't have solutions. Today, we do have it. The question is, are we aggressive enough to do it? I've seen it happen. I congratulate the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister on this move. I think it's wonderful that has happened.
Mr. C Bhargava, you're under pressure. The Niti Aayog is coming for you. We saw Rajiv Kumar earlier. Now Amitabh Kant, they're eyeing the cash balances you're sitting on. They're expecting big discounts. So are you going to announce, sitting here at the India Today Conclave, that when a new week starts, Maruti is going to slash prices? Please tell us by how much.
No, really there is no pressure, because I am totally in agreement that over the last 5 years and more, a huge amount of work has been done for ease of doing business, for transparency in doing business, for removing many of the non-accounted costs of doing business. And I think that's all very positive for doing business. And that has been reinforced by what has been done yesterday. But let me also mention that the rate of growth of manufacturing in India, not only in the last 5 years, but ever since we started development in 1950, has nowhere been near the rate which is required to achieve the Prime Minister's target of getting manufacturing to contribute 25% to the GDP by 2024. Manufacturing is barely limping along, I'm not sure of the exact figure, but around 5% a year. You need to get it up to 15% a year. So what has been done yesterday is certainly going to be a very big step towards making that happen. For the reason, partly which has been said, that it is now created an environment in India where for foreign investors, the tax regime in India is more favorable than almost anywhere, as was said. What was not said was that, in fact, for new manufacturing startups being registered from 1st October, the regime, in fact, will be the best anywhere in the world because it comes down to 17%, 19% if you include all surcharges. Nowhere in the world will you get this.
Mr. Bhargava,
so the tax regime has become very favorable.
You dodged the bullet that was flung your way.
Sorry?
You dodged the bullet that was flung your way. Mr. Kant has started this. There will be a rising clamor for corporate India to slash prices, offer deep discounts beyond what you've done right now. Would you like to use this opportunity to tell us what you intend to do in the new week?
I don't often disagree on anything with Amitabh. But that nothing more needs to be done by government and everything has to be done by industry. I'll take a little bit of issue with him. My point is now that you have to address, as was said, the supply side, the demand side. And the problem today is that all the policies we've had since the beginning of independence, from the time of independence, have tried to combine two very laudable objectives: industrial growth, industrialization of India, and social equity and justice. But they've tried to achieve both these objectives by one policy. And all experience will show that when you combine two objectives which are not necessarily compatible objectives in the short term, with one policy you fail. And we have failed throughout. My suggestion is that if you want to get further ahead, one thing which has to be done is to separate out the policies for wealth creation and the policies for achieving social justice.
Sir, everyone who's watching on TV, sitting here in the audience wants to know, is Maruti going to cut prices very deeply? Do you see that happen or not? That's the question Mr. Kant is asking. Twice over you dodged him.
Maruti's prices de facto have already been cut in the market through discounts. Whether a formal cut will happen or not, I cannot possibly announce here. But please wait a couple of days and you'll have the answer with you.
See, that's what I was trying to get. I want to understand.
So may I add one more point after me? On the demand side, what I was saying about the policy combination is reflected in the GST policy. GST is fixed very much like the socialist days of 1960-70, that products which are meant for the rich are charged the highest GST. Products which are supposed to be for the common man are charged the lowest GST.
Okay. Dr. Goenka, I want to understand from you, because the government's now putting a lot of the onus on the private sector. How does Mahindra & Mahindra respond to what the government has announced when it comes to deep cuts in corporate taxes?
So Rahul, press Mr. Bhargava a little more. I want to find out whether there will be price reduction or not, because I have to follow
He's
the big brother.
He's indicated in 2 days there will be good news coming.
Okay, so I'll wait for 2 days because I have to follow the big brother. Whatever he does, we have to do. Okay.
Will you be under pressure to do even more?
So let's peel the onions a little bit. Of course, what was announced recently has given us a little bit of headroom in terms of what we can do as OEMs. It's not that we have not been doing anything. If you look at the discounts that are available today, they are amongst the highest that I have seen in a long, long time, no matter which company it is. Right? Auto companies are investing on marketing, they're investing on discount, they're investing on many other customer-related things. Now, we have a little bit more headroom, and if I do a rough calculation, we probably, for the same PBIT, have about 5% more PAT. about 5% more PAT. So even if we were to pass on 100% of it to the discount, then we can reduce 5%. If we were to pass on 100%, we can reduce 5%. Is 5% going to be enough to get the demand back to bring the animal spirit back? I'm not so sure. We have already reduced 5-6%. In trucks, you won't believe the discount is 20% already. So and from 20%, if you increase 5%, I don't know how much.
That's a very good point you make, and I want to come to that, and I'll start with Mr. Piramal, because corporate India says it's not discounts that are the problems. Maruti, Mahindra and Mahindra go elsewhere. Inventory is piling up. 5 lakh vehicles with dealers at this time. It's because there isn't demand. Consumption is down. 5% extra discount, argues Dr. Goenka, won't solve the problem. This is not a magic bullet. How do you view this?
So first, I think what's been done on the corporate tax is something which I could not ever believe it would happen, and it's a great thing. And so it's really what was needed. As important as the benefit of saving of tax is also the confidence that business and industry is getting, that the government is listening, government is aware that there are issues and are willing to solve it and go all out. So it was a very brave step. But what more needs to be done? I think it is really to spur demand. Mr. Kant made a very important point that this whole crisis started in exactly a year ago, actually on the 23rd of September, when ILFS failed to give only 102 crores. There was a mutual fund that they could not meet their obligations. And then the whole 2.5 trillion economy actually has been suffering since then. And that is what we need to understand and see how we can tackle this issue of liquidity. It's not a question of, it's not that companies are failing, but there is not enough liquidity. And if you don't have liquidity, you will not get immediate demand. Mr. Kant has made very important points. We had 3 doses of liquidity given. The importance of NBFCs has been mentioned by the Prime Minister, by Finance Minister, by RBI Governor. But just for facts, the amount of liquidity which was given to NBFCs since till July was less by 4,500 crores. So we have not actually passed it on. The RBI has done a lot of releasing funds, but it has not gone on into the NBFCs. If they don't go into the NBFCs, which are the key to whether it is for consumer durables, whether it is for automobiles, whether it is for housing, if these are not there, how
Okay, so let me put that question to Mr. Kant, because the lack of consumption has been one of the key problems. The Indian GDP growth engine was largely firing because of consumption amongst the top 100 million. That's now stalling. I want to show you from the RBI report that came out recently on consumer confidence, how consumer confidence is now in the negative. This after the Modi government won an emphatic majority in May. Despite that, in the build-up, consumer confidence was up. After that, consumer confidence is down. Corporate India and economists would argue, just by reducing corporate taxation, you don't do enough to address the principal issue of generating consumer confidence and reviving demand. Respond to that.
So Rahul, if you were to look at the first 3 doses of the economic boosters, several measures were taken both for NBFCs and an additional 20,000 crores for housing finance companies, etc. Now, I'm a great believer that consumer demand works around sentiments. And what the government has tried to do with the 4th one, it's not about just liquidity. There's adequate liquidity in the market. The sentiments for purchase are not there. And what the government has tried to do is to break that sentiment.